leader person, like when he was talking about the different places people normally fall into. I naturally build relationships away from those. Can you still hear me?
I can now. Yep, you're good.
Okay. I shy away from those hard conversations. I hate them. So the scary thing I did this week was I have a gal who's been, I want silver, yada, yada. And so I messaged her and I was just like, okay, so here's the deal. We need to get you silver. You register for Super Saturday, so you have these free enrollment codes. There's absolutely no reason you are not silver. If I give you exactly what to do and exactly what to say, will you say it? Will you do it? And she's like, yeah. So then I started giving her what to do, and she started pushing back, like, do it scared. You can do this. Do it scared. And she's like, okay. And she like almost crying, but she did it. And that day that I messaged her, which I think was Tuesday, so the day after our call, we've been working together. She's messaged over 35 people, cold messages, which I think before that she might have messaged 2. We've got like 4 different people in 3-way chats. So nobody has actually purchased anything yet, but this is like massive movement for her. Mm-hmm. She has never, ever done anything like this before. So
oops, you froze up again.
It fell into a lot.
Oops, she muted. Okay, well, anyways, we got the gist of that. That's leadership. When you can say hard things to people, and that's where I totally am not where I need to be, because it's really hard for me to, I think it's almost a bigger thing than we think it's actually going to be. The whole, like, I don't want to ruffle feathers, I don't want to offend someone, I don't want to say that to them, even though they really need to hear it. And so that is definitely a growth curve, and I can track with Stephanie on that, but it's a necessary part of being a good coach. And I know that Jessica Heffley had a heart-to-heart with one of her girls that wanted Emerald. I think she was like a level 4. And she had to tell her point blank, she's like, the reason you are not where you want to be is because you are a bitch. And it was one of those moments where the girl was like, you're right. It was really hard to hear that. And Justin was privy to this at his leadership training because she shared her story. But she took Jessica's hard, what was it? I don't know, like just honest evaluation and changed herself. And she's Emerald now. So anyways, that's just a quick story on that. But Stephanie, thank you for sharing. I loved hearing how you like handheld with her and was that you approach the conversation with, you're saying this, but you're not putting in the action, and then not just leaving her there, but actually guiding her through steps. And so that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Did anyone pick a few people to encourage this week? How did that go? Melody or Steffi? Is that Cassie? I think the 276 number. Feel free to unmute and share, or something else if you have something else that you did.
I was reminded when I reached out to one of my people over the weekend to ask how to pray for them, like kind of as a way to encourage them and see where they're at and connect with them. I had a team Zoom. That was kind of my scary thing that I did last week too, Gretchen. So I hear you on that. But anyway, one of the ladies said to me during the Zoom, she said, Melody, that's how you could pray for me early on. And that just meant so much to me that you weren't just, anyway, she just said something really sweet. And I was like, oh, wow. That was cool for me to hear that it made a difference and it blessed her. So it was nice to get some feedback. So anyway, I've been reminded to pray and ask, how can I pray?
Yes, excellent. I love that. I reached out to some people on the team today, and that's one thing that I asked them as well. And I think it's a good way even to connect with wholesalers or even people that you're, interacting with on Facebook because you want them on your team or you really feel like the products could bless them. I think people don't hear encouragement and they aren't asked that question, like, how can I pray for you? But people feel very honored and valued when we do say things like that. So it's good reminders because it's free. It doesn't cost anything. Oops, sorry about the feedback, guys. Okay, we'll unmute one at a time, and I'll mute myself when you guys talk. Okay, who wants to share one of their strengths? We talked about this last week, doing that homework and evaluating our strengths. Who has a strength that they're willing to share? This was very hard for me when I was asked this because I felt like it was very self-focused, but I'm realizing that the more self-aware you are, the more effective you can be. The more effective you can be in your parenting, in your marriage, all those things, which a lot of times are your strength can be your weakness as well, and that's what Justin tells me. So let's hear from someone.
My strength in my field of my world right now, just in parenthood, not yet in Plexus, but hopefully it will transfer, is the ability to delegate and manage and see where other people's strengths, what I can release from my own plate.
That's exactly what this lady, I'm rereading back through this book and taking notes, Romy, she said the reason why more women aren't successful at network marketing is because they don't delegate. So I'm toward the end of the book and I thought it was really profound. So yeah, love that, Molly. Who else wants to share a strength?
I don't know if you all saw where Simon Dot. It was Nikki Hinkle. She was talking about knowing our strengths as a way to combat comparison. I loved that. And she was also saying when you're looking for your strengths, you're not saying that you're the best at it. You're not saying that you don't have room for improvement in it. You're just finding your strengths, acknowledging that, they can get better and that sort of thing. I thought that was really good. Strengths that I have, generally, I'm relatively positive. I'm a team player. I enjoy succeed. That's not threatening to me in general. And I did the StrengthsFinder 2.0, and I was laughing at myself the other day because it's very true. I'm extremely strategic. I was paying my bills, and I had a strategy for which bill I was going to pay first so I could get in the mailbox, make sure it went out before the mailman came, because it really needed to go out and the other ones didn't so much. It was just kind of hilarious. So I'm learning how to apply those things and how to help lay out a strategy a little more for team members with specific goals to apply those things. So.
I love that. Strategic. That's going to be huge and crucial because a lot of your team members will not be that way. I can tell you they have their big goal, but they have no idea how to get there. So I think that can definitely play into your success with your team. And the other thing about team player, I really appreciate, and Justin and I were just talking about this. He's like, I don't know that I was so supportive of other people's successes until we were successful or doing something like what we're doing. And I really believe that having that attitude of being a team player and celebrating other people's successes is a surefire way to be successful. And there's some people that have a lid on themselves because they compare or they're not a team player, or they're very overprotective of their team, where they don't want anyone else's input, and that's a lid. And those people will have to become more self-aware that's not healthy, and their teams won't grow as fast as they could, or they won't grow at all, and they'll just stagnate to have that sort of attitude. So Gretchen, I love that you shared that. And yeah, it's just encouraging to hear you guys' strengths. I love that. So who else is game? Steffi or Jan? You want to pipe in, or Wendy or Cassie? A strength that you've reflected on?
I can chime in a minute because I seem to have connection right now. So sorry, girls. I do have some connection problems tonight. If I disappear quickly, it's just because it disappeared. So one of my strengths is definitely organization. I spend a lot of time organizing for a lot of things. And I actually just came from a meeting where I'm organizing our homeschool curriculum fair for this coming year, and we'll have 100 exhibitors there, and we'll put somewhere around 1,500 families through that event. So organization is usually my strength. I can usually see step by step what needs to be done to get somewhere. So doesn't mean that I have figured out how I'm going to do that in my business yet, but I can usually visualize steps to get to the end result.
So when you say your strength is organization, do you feel like your life circumstances caused you to have to be that way, or were you always naturally that way?
I definitely think it's a combination. My educational background is accounting. So I like things orderly, and everything has a way it's supposed to happen. But then being the mother of 7 children, you discovered that everything doesn't happen orderly and doesn't happen the way you think it's supposed to happen. So I do think it's a combination, Megan, of personality and life circumstances that get you there. At the same time, being the mother of 7 requires that you have a plan. Otherwise, nothing ever gets done. You live in, constant chaos if you don't have a plan. You cannot homeschool your children without a plan. The list could go on and on. So organization and planning is where a lot of my responsibilities have fallen. So I think you develop that when it's required of you too.
Agreed. Very good. Okay, let's take one more. Who else is willing to share a strength?
I can.
Okay, perfect.
I wanted to read Cassie's really quick because she put it in our messenger. Cassie said that her strengths are easy to talk to, objective, and positive mindset, anything is possible attitude. So anyway, I just want to read hers, but I think it's really cool that we're all gifted with different strengths, because I'm sitting here thinking, well, I'm not the most organized and I'm not very good at delegating, but we have those strengths to share with each other. So if I need to learn how to delegate, then I'll just call Molly up. So I think my strengths are words. I can talk to people pretty easily, whether it's encouraging or challenging or, I don't know, God's just gifted me with words to give people. And I think that's, as a leader, that's important. Sometimes I have too many words and maybe they don't make sense, but, so I don't know what you would put that under, but, I think that also I'm dependable. I'm not afraid to, admit when I'm wrong. And I always show up to help my team, or to, if they don't know what to say, then just the other day, I was my friend was asking me all these questions on what to say. And we did the 3-way chat thing, and it just came naturally, just hey, thanks for, whatever. So I think words is one of my strengths.
Excellent. Awesome. Okay. So let's go ahead and go on to our chapter level 2, which is permission. You can't lead people until you like people. So the first level is position, which is rights. People follow you because they have to. And then we move up to permission, which is the foundation is relationships. So leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Agree or disagree, and why? Don't be scared to pop on. I don't want to do all the talking.
I think that's true of good leadership, but I don't think that's always often the case.
Do you think that relationship has a lot to do with influence? It's kind of talking about that into the second paragraph on the first page of the second chapter. I like what he says. Relationships are a major key to success. Whether you're trying to sell, coach, teach, lead, or simply navigate the daily tasks of life. If you look at page 118, he says in the second paragraph, he says, if you boil leadership down to its essence, it is influence. And that would be good leadership. Leaders help people work together to accomplish goals that benefit everyone involved. How does one person get others to do something willingly, excellently, and consistently? That would be by influencing them. I liked when he said leadership always means people are going somewhere. No journey, no leadership. And I think that ties into the law of navigation that he talks about in his 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. The ability to look ahead. So it's not just like what are our teams, what are we putting out there for our teams this week, but actually looking out to next month, next 3 months, next 6 months. Leadership is an opportunity to serve. Agree? I wrote a couple notes down.
I really do agree with that. And I liked on page 89 where he said that above all else, good leaders are open. They go up, down, and around their organizations to reach people. They don't stick to established channels. They're informal. They're straight with people. They make a religion out of being accessible. So I think that servant heart is really a true leader.
I had that written down as well. So don't be afraid, definitely, to not just reach your people that you've personally sponsored, but reach into your lower levels, because sometimes people underneath those people actually want it more or need it more than your level 1 ambassadors. They might be a connector, to connect you to that other level 2, 3, or 4, or whatever.
I like what Janelle shared too when she said the quote that leaders are informal. Leadership is such a fluid position, and you have to be able to adapt and assess quickly and go into where it is effective at any given moment. It's not a formula. It's not an equation that it will work every time.
So on page 93, it talks about showing respect and valuing others and appreciating differences. It talks about becoming aware of the uniqueness of people and learning to appreciate their differences. And if I was coaching someone and they said, Megan, I just need everyone on my team to be like me. In essence, she wants an easy job. She doesn't want to have to coach people or deal with other personalities. But the reality is, it's very rare to have people just like you on your team. And you want a variety of color personalities, of strength zones, and all those things. And so I think it's important to become aware of the people on your team I really liked in the second second paragraph of that on page 93 where he said, when he was starting out his job as a pastor, his dad gave him the advice that said, "Son, the vast majority of people who walk through the doors of the church feel undervalued, insecure, and lost. It's your job to change that." I never forgot that. And I think it goes back to showing, loving your neighbor as yourself. Justin was talking about that. He just attended a entrepreneur workshop in Chicago, and he said that was one of the biggest things. They said valuing people and loving them. So, does someone have another thought to add to that? I feel like this really ties into our homework that we did with encouraging people.
Another quote that really struck me, and I've actually been spending quite a bit of time on this one, was over on page 97, he talked about where he realized that his real problem was he was a people pleaser. His goal had been to make everyone happy. That was the wrong goal. As a leader, my goal should have been to help people, not to make them happy. That realization changed my leadership. For the first time I was freed up, I was no longer held captive by every person's opinion, which was a very unhealthy place to be. I could focus on doing what I believed was best for the organization and the people. That really rattled well with me, because I think sometimes, even if I'm not necessarily trying to be a people pleaser, I think I'm so worried about making sure that everyone's happy that I'm forgetting that I really need to focus on what's best overall and not what's, and I liked how he talked about that he was held captive by it, that he was finally freed up when he didn't hold himself captive to everybody's opinion.
Along with what Stephanie was saying.
I was just going to say, I love that part too. The other part kind of ties into what Megan said earlier for me. The bit about when he's going over best behaviors on level 2, and he starts talking about how much it starts with you, and if you're not self-aware, how difficult it is to make progress. And like Megan in the beginning, it feels so self-centered to really try to sit down and figure out what are your strengths, for example, specifically. But then that also ties into, they can also be your weaknesses, to sort of figure out where you really are to get a good picture, so that you then
Whoops, we cut out at the end there, but yeah, I agree. So what are your thoughts? Is it easier to think about your weaknesses than your strengths? Because I feel like I know what I'm not good at, but to think about what I am good at, almost, it does feel like wrong or something, and it shouldn't be. We should, and I think it's important even with our kids to be recognizing the things that they're good at, because instead of always trying to focus on the weakness and be better at the weakness, why not just play into your strengths? That's the premise of that Strength Finders book anyways. Who else had an aha moment and wants to pipe in?
I just wanted to say, it's definitely easier for me to recognize my weaknesses than my strengths. And what you said, that we just need to, it's so important to recognize what we do right. I'm reading another book called The Anatomy of Peace, and he drew a triangle and just the very tip of the iceberg, and said what's going wrong. We focus on that. All of our focus is on that, but the whole rest of the bottom of the triangle, and what's more important, is focusing on making things go right. So anyway, when we can focus on our strengths, we can make a lot of things go right, and it helps us with our weaknesses.
Exactly.
It helps us overcome them. So, and none of us are without strengths. We're just without the awareness of maybe even of their value.
Agreed. I definitely agree. And if we can play into our strengths more, I think our weaknesses kind of are overshadowed by that, where it's not as big of a deal because we're good at those other things, and we lift up those things that we're good at. Curious what your thoughts are on page 99, where it says permissional leaders can be taken advantage of. People whose leadership style is non-relational are usually seen as no-nonsense leaders. Positional leaders often use their positions to distance themselves from subordinates. High achievers sometimes intimidate their followers. But when leaders are relational, their followers get closer to them. That sometimes means they mistake kindness for weakness. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on those. And he goes into saying that relationships are risky, but choosing to build relationships is really important. So I know that I feel like the more I've gotten to know Jessica Heffley, the less I'm intimidated by her, because she's like super successful. But then like being on calls with her and different things, like she's admitted certain things about herself, like in her first year compared to her second year. So curious what y'all think.
Megan,
Yeah.
Megan, was she more relational or less relational in her first year?
Well, I don't know that she was less relational. I just didn't know her as well. And so when I heard her share like what she needed to do differently, or how, everything she did on her team was basically to appeal to red personalities, and not slowing down, or not slowing down, but not realizing that some people crave quality time or words of affirmation, or they want to help other people, and so doing some giveaway type things to include more of those type of personalities. That's just an example she gave.
Mm-hmm. I think what you read absolutely resonates with my whole life. Like, my strengths are also encouragement and mercy, empathy, and so I think that people mistake my strengths as weakness, for sure. And even I will mistake it for weakness as well. And I think I have to keep strengthening my own backbone and, keep telling myself really important things about boundaries, time boundaries, and even emotional boundaries, where I want to take on, and help other people so much that I neglect things that are my responsibility for my life or my family,
Mm-hmm.
So actually, sometimes maybe being a permissional leader it can be, you can get stuck there because you're so busy in the relationship.
Where did he say? Oh, here we go. On page 97, I really like the last paragraph. So he needed to add the hard side of leadership to my natural bent toward the relational soft side. Others have to learn the soft side and add to it the hard productive side. The point is, you need both. If you're relational without being productive, you and your team won't achieve any progress. If you're productive without being relational, you may make a small degree of progress in the beginning, but you'll fall short in the long run because you'll either alienate your people or burn them out. You can't become successful in leadership until you learn both, and it's so much a balance. But does anyone want to flesh that
It
up?
really is.
What do you guys tend to be?
I think you're doing that. I think you personally are doing that. I mean, I think you've talked about it before, where your red bent is like, okay, I'm going to go recruit everybody then. Right, I'm just going to keep working and working and working. And now I've seen it in the past year. You're not going to stop working. I mean, that's how you get where you're going. But now you're taking time for coaching calls and book studies and meetings, you know, with small teams or one-on-one. And so I see you doing that, finding that balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
And I see me trying to like ramp up the other side of my team, because I have a very solid, steady relational team. But I'm asking my people, like, so what is it going to take to get you to start working again? Because they're all just they're just taking a break. Everyone's just taking a break. And I'm like, okay, what's it going to take? And their answer is they don't know. I know the answer. The answer is that I have to do it. That's the answer.
Mm-hmm. It does start with us and asking good questions. I loved, was it Rebecca Williams? I remember if I sent you that, Wendy. I meant to. I love what she shared, because she said that she's had a lot of hard things happen in her journey to Diamond, including the loss of her dad and having a baby and other things. But she said, I think it was her that said, take a breath, not a break. I liked that verbiage. I thought that was good. And I also will say, I realized after I say stuck at Emerald, it's not a bad place to be stuck, but for over like 14 months, the way I got out of that was not just me doing the things, but helping other people do the things. So the sooner that you all can, and I see you guys all doing this, I don't feel like I did it well in my first year, but taking time to really help people learn the steps and like coming alongside of them. So like some face-to-face. And I know that's what Sarah Taylor said got her out of, she was stuck at Ruby for a long time. And she said it was exactly what level 2 is, relationships. Okay, so I don't want to keep talking. You guys share your thoughts.
Do you think women as in general are more soft-sided relational at all? I find myself being that way, and most of my team of women being that way as well.
Who is that talking? I don't recognize your voice.
Oh, Molly Schultz.
Oh, that was Molly. Molly, are you a red or a yellow or something else?
Yellow.
Yellow.
Well, I'm a cultivated yellow. I was born a red, but since cultivated myself.
You were actually born a red, and so you've morphed into a yellow because your husband's also a red?
Correct. You're
or
so
white.
Yes, that's exactly.
Yeah. So actually, just so you know, so then in the women's circles, you're still a red, just so you know. Because I'm yellow blue, and I attract reds like crazy in other circumstances, not like in I'm not attracting reds to my business yet. I will, but I haven't really yet. But I don't know why that is. And I don't know why I just said that either. I've lost my complete train of thought. But because you're a red, so you're probably attracting a lot of yellows. Opposites attract. It's just really odd that way. Like I have a lot of friends who are reds.
Thank you for sharing that. That's super insightful and eye-opening.
Does that make sense?
Yes, very much.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I'm sure, we have to accommodate our husbands. We just have to. But if you were born red, then you still have that. So, which is a good thing.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Wendy, but I was going to say
go, Jocelyn.
I'm a little bit opposite because, I was born red too, and then I married a yellow. So I had to turn more yellow so I didn't, run over. And so it's interesting in conversations and just, we've been married for 6 years this year. Yeah. And just like, he's so good at relationships and he will find things and notice things. And I'm like, I didn't notice. I'm just, blazing my own trail and getting things done and whatever, but he's got the relational strengths. And so it's been interesting with Plexus that I've seen that I need that. You know, I think being a Christian and being raised in church and by a really, really yellow mother, like super yellow, I think that taught me how to have that kind of yellow heart. But I feel like I have a very driven mindset and like a very driven, bold personality. And so it's interesting with Plexus, like the yellow side has come out a lot, but it's something I need to work on. So when I see this, learn the soft side and add it to the hard productive side. The hard productive side is there in me, but the soft side of coming along my people, especially if they are a little bit more, I don't know, maybe have more excuses or just they don't know, you know, they don't want to blaze a trail, which I have one gal who does want to blaze a trail, which is so refreshing. But so I've had to learn the yellow side a lot more. And it's just funny because I didn't marry a super red person. And so it's interesting because, you know, I don't know. It's just cool how the Lord grows you in relationships. And I feel like Plexus is just another one of those outlets that I'm learning a lot more about myself and people.
I really like the section on 112 where it's in the section about care and candor, but it says that when he's having difficulty with a person, he asks the one simple question, is this person a can't or a won't? Can't is about abilities. We can help those people in most cases, not all cases, but in most. But won't is about attitude. If the issue is attitude, the time to let that person know there's a problem is now, because, you know, here's the deal, and he goes on from there. But I really liked that little section about asking that question, is this a can't or a won't? And that ties so much into these relationships that we're talking about, and how we build them or don't build them is really built on if it's ability or if it's attitude. And when he says that care without candor creates dysfunctional relationships and candor without care creates distant relationships. So finding that balance is just so important in these relationships that we're talking about.
Do you guys find that being a good question asker is key? I feel like it takes the pressure off instead of me feeling like I have to tell everyone what I see. Basically asking them pointed questions where they come to the realization themselves, which is 100 times better every day if they can do that. Stephanie, did you want to pipe in something?
That specifically, Megan, like being a better question asker?
Whoops, I didn't catch the first part.
Is there some kind of training, a book, a video, or something on that specific thing, being a better question asker? I feel like that could be very beneficial to me specifically. Learning how to do that.
Does someone want to pipe in?
There's a book, I think it is by John Maxwell too. I think it's just called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions.
I don't feel like I'm very good at this, but I'm kind of walking into uncharted waters just by doing. Like, I don't know how to do this, but I'll just try. I feel like that's been my whole journey so far. And I feel like
and just being and just being aware of, like, my teammates, they keep reminding themselves on our chat threads, I need to ask more questions. And that's in three-way chats with people. That's one thing I'm pretty good at is three-way chats with my people's people. And when they get them in there, I guess this isn't the business building side, but the customer side is I just start asking them questions. You know, so what are your health goals? And, you know, when you say you have that, do you have any other health issues? Do you have allergies? All those things. And then just continue. So what does, you know, how does that affect your life? What have you already tried? Just all kind. I'm just really good at asking questions. And every time we get off of the three-way chat, my teammate always says, oh my goodness, I just learned so much from you. So maybe even just three-way chat, Stephanie, with Megan, coaching, you know, just have a 3-way chat with Megan coaching one of your level ones would help with question asking.
Wendy, I agree with you. You are a great question asker.
Aww.
And and I can see how that really plays into your business too, because you know which questions to ask, and then you're doing the things and training your team to ask, or showing them by doing, of how to ask the questions and which questions to ask. That's actually a great team page post. I like that. Questions to ask.
I'm going to tap into that strength, Mindy.
What's that?
Oh, I just said we need Wendy to train us from her strength of asking questions.
Yeah. Would you be game for either doing maybe a Facebook Live or making a post on the questions to ask, and like what you ask your people? Oops, where'd she go? She's muted. Anyways, I think that'd be great since it's her strength zone. In light of coaching as well, Jessica Heffley let me sit in on a coaching call with Lynn Hauersile recently, or like a month ago, and it really helped me listen. I was just like a fly on the wall, listening to the questions she asked her and how she kind of drew out of her different things. I did make a file on the team page. I made 2 actually of coaching call questions. So just to give you guys a starter point, if you're starting to do coaching calls with people, which I highly recommend. And I agree with Wendy, the 3-way chats, there is so much value in those. I think sometimes our people don't know how or what to say to people, and they have trouble either closing or they have trouble asking the right questions. So are you guys seeing good results with 3-way chats with your people? What about on page 103, 102, 103, permission leadership forces you to deal with the whole person? Have you guys does anyone have a story about having to look at someone or look at hard truths, see people's flaws, face reality, but do it in the spirit of grace and truth? Does anyone have a story about that? Because I feel like the farther we go, the more the more opportunities for approaching people about things or just resolving conflicts. And I tend to just run from conflict. I don't want to address things, but I'm realizing that's not what a leader does. So curious if anyone has a story or a thought on that, or just coaching. Doesn't have to be some big scary thing, but it's just like coaching people when you see them, you're like, hey, oh dear, I need to coach them.
I can think of a time where when I first started, a couple of my posts weren't compliant. And I think that's hard sometimes. Sorry, my 2-year-old. I think that's hard sometimes for people to tell other people that, because it's like, oh, you're so new. I don't want to, all of a sudden be telling you something that you don't want to hear. But Angie came to me really sweetly and was like, hey, instead of saying this, could you say this? And I think that helps. I don't know where I'm going with this, but totally got distracted. But does that kind of answer what you're asking?
Mm-hmm. But I feel like, because I need to coach someone, I saw a post, something that's really not compliant. But it's that fine balance, because you don't want to like discourage them from sharing. So it is, and I know that when Carrie coached me, because I posted like the prices of things, I had no idea that it wasn't compliant to like post those publicly. So she was just like, hey, you're not supposed to post prices. I was like, oh, sorry. Oh dear. I went and changed it quickly. But like, I was thankful that she told me those things. And there's been other things that she's had to tell me, like, just to coach me on. It's a good thing. I think that's the thing, is we have to view it as a good thing. I like the takeaways on the best behaviors. Did you guys have anything that you highlighted in there? Kind of getting to the end of the section.
I think it's kind of hard, Megan, but I think we have to practice being receptive to correction. And I think we need to just practice and model the right way to handle when we need to be corrected. Because, face it, whether it's intentional or unintentional, we're all going to need to be kind of guided at some point in time to get. And I just think that if we can model that right spirit of taking correction, it will help the rest of our team so much. But if we're really defensive and don't respond well to correction, it won't benefit our team at all. So I think it's really important to model how we accept when we're corrected. Like Stephanie just talked about, Angie did it so sweetly, but there's other times when you might be corrected and it might not be done real sweetly, where somebody might just say, hey, you can't do that, or why did you do that, or whatever the case might be. And just to, no matter how you're corrected, to model correct responses is really important for the rest of our team.
Yeah, and I think it goes both ways. Don't you guys think? Like, I think it's good for us to be coachable as well. And even asking, like, what do you see in me that I need to be better at, or something I need to grow in? Jessica's told me before things that she's seen is more in relation to fear for me. But I think it's good to invite that, even the coachability.
He actually talks about that in the book. And is it Warren observed effective leaders reward dissent as well as encourage it. They understand what momentary discomfort they experience as a result of being told from time to time that they're wrong is more than offset by the fact that reflective back talk increases the leader's ability to make good decisions.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, page 117. As you work with people and have candid conversations, allow me to remind you of one thing. Candidness is a two-way street. You must solicit feedback, and you must be mature and secure enough to take people's criticism without defense. Yeah, exactly. And that can be hard. So, does anyone have a candid conversation that you need to have with someone? I like the points he made on 116. Do it quickly, never in anger, privately and thoughtfully.
And I think it's important too, when you do that, to always give an out and always give a gracious out so they have an option. Don't stonewall them where they have nowhere to go but to be defensive.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys think it has a lot to do with how it's said? I feel like I'm always telling my kids, not what you say as much as it is how you say it.
Molly, can you give an example of what you're talking about as far as giving an out?
When somebody, when Angie talked to Steffi and said, you shouldn't, instead of saying this, you could say this, it gives her an option. It gives her, instead of just where they don't really know where to go from there except to be defensive. I don't know, I find that with my kids a lot too, when I'm correcting or having a candid conversation with them, to give them a gracious out, to give them direction of the next step, so it doesn't breed frustration and exasperation.
Who had some takeaways, like some application points? Because that's all. That's the whole. That's the whole point of this, is to take away some applications. Who's game for sharing something that really spoke to them that you want to put into practice?
I'm terrible at receiving constructive criticism, so I need to mature and grow in that area so that I can model it for my family and my team.
I've heard it put as emotional maturity, and I feel like the older I get, the more I'm aware of that when I see it lacking in other people, or even when I notice it in myself, like a lack of emotional maturity, and that's what it is. Pride probably is at the root of it. But anyways, yeah, good. Who else? Don't be scared.
Megan, I love that he brought out the golden rule, because I feel like that just goes to the root of so much of this. Like, if you need to have a kind of conversation with someone, would you want that to be done to you? Like, you would, right? And then encouragement, like, that's so at the root of this, you know? Like, you would love an encouraging word, and so would your team. I just love that he really made that a big point in the chapter.
One of the things I'm really going to be working on this next week is working towards giving people my undivided attention. You brought that out, and I realized that I often am trying to do way too many things all at once. I'm not necessarily giving people my undivided attention. I think that is a valuable skill to build, to help build relationships and work with people.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's good to be willing to ask your teammate, if I can't remember the exact wording, but if I see, or if you knew that I could see something that was holding you back, would you want to know?
I had a couple.
Perfect.
One was, I don't know what page this is on because I have the Kindle version. So, but it's point 3 in one of the things. Achieving the vision as a team is worth risking a relationship. To me, this whole section rattled me and also made me realize this is a big block for me, because that was not something that I would have been willing to do until he kind of flushed this out. And so now I realize it's something I have to leaders must sacrifice for the sake of the vision, risking a whole thing out in this section really well. So that is something that I have to get my head around. And the other thing that I realized is he went through about, do you know your people? And he gave a list of, if you can't name these things about every person on your team, you don't have that good of a relationship with them. And I realized, I've actually been told this before, but maybe I didn't take it seriously. I am okay with very casual, very friendly, very surface relationships with most people. And I'm fine with that. I get a lot of joy out of that. I'm okay with that. And that they didn't remember something about me from one week to the next at church does not offend me in the least. Like, I'm sure they've got other stuff going on, but that is offensive to some people, that you don't know things about them or can't remember things about them. So that was something that I need to work on, is that just because it's not a big deal to me doesn't mean it's not a big deal to a lot of other people. And so I need to go and write all of my people down and actually answer the questions that he had in here about each of those people and see who I need to intentionally
Excellent.
relationship.
Love that. Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing. Okay. Anyone else really quick want to share a takeaway or something you're going to apply? Okay. Well, it's a wrap. Let's, I will put a couple of things, like homework things, in the chat thread. Just simple things. I think it really piggybacks off of what last week's homework was. I like how he talked about being a chief encourager and remembering the golden rule. And I feel like that's one thing that really helped me get out of a slump, was going through and recognizing and encouraging people. Even if I didn't know them personally on my team, I gave them a shout out. And I really think just the act of doing those things and trying to do them consistently really helped our whole culture. And it's free. That's the other thing too, is encouragement is free. And I think for some people like myself, I feel like I don't think in those terms. So I have to slow down. And that's something that Jessica said is slow down enough to love people well. I can't remember the exact quote, but that was the essence of it. And so we'll end on that note. And thank you guys for popping on. I'm loving this book study. I'm loving it even better the second time through with you guys. So we'll meet back next week, and we'll work on chapter 3, level 3. And that's my favorite level, by the way. I really gleaned a lot from that when I went through it the first time. So I'm excited to read it with a new set of eyes and ears. So, all right. Have a great week, you guys. Thanks for popping on.